Hi guys, it's Kaylee. Today's video we're going over the Superbox menus and how to navigate through them. So stay with me. In today's video we're going over the Superbox menus. So first we're going to show how to initialize or clear the box. These dip switches here, we're going to move the number 1 to the up position. If you get a new box from us that's programmed to USB, it's probably already going to be in the up position. And then we're going to power on our box. Now once we power it on, it's going to go into the initialization menu. If you need your box in liters, you're going to leave it on DE and then we're going to change the language. If you need it in US gallons, we're going to change the country code to US and we're going to hit enter. Now it's going to prompt us to put in a serial number. The serial number is going to start with 01, and then you just want to make sure that you don't have 2 of the same serial numbers if you're going on the cloud, Wi-Fi, or LAN. And you have multiple boxes, because it's going to confuse the boxes. So you want to make sure the serial number is different. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's 8 digits long and it starts with a 0. And then we're going to hit enter. Now we're going to pick our background socket modem. We have some different options here. We have the LAN, the Wi-Fi, the cloud, cellular, and then 3 dashes is just the USB. I'm gonna hit enter there, and then now we're gonna have our date and time to set. So if you need to change the time, you're gonna scroll down to the time and then you can just override it and you can hit enter. Now once that's happened, it's gonna tell you to move the number 1 back down. We do not have to power down the box. We're just gonna move the number 1 back to the down position. And now we're on our main screen. So to get into the menu on the Superbox, you're gonna hit any top gray key and then you're gonna hit the wrench. You're gonna do your 9 5 times and hit enter. If you change your master code, it's gonna be whatever you've changed it to. So now we have the menu refueling. So inside the menu refueling, we have show data. We don't have any transactions on here, but you're able to go in your transactions and scroll through them up into the 10,000 transaction point. Reset data, this resets your refueling count. So each transaction is assigned a number 1 through 10,000. If you're needing to go in and reset that count for some reason, you changed a pulse or you want to start over, you can go in and reset that. Restore, what this does is whenever any kind of platform, whether it be USB HD Manager, Wi-Fi, LAN, or cloud, is going to put a check mark when it has gotten a transaction. If for some reason you lost the USB stick or you know someone else downloaded by accident to their computer, then we can go in and restore. This takes all the checks off and then you're able to pull the data again. Memory occupancy is going to show you how many refuelings or how much percentage of refuelings that you have used in the box. And then delete memory is going to get rid of all those refuelings. If we exit one time, we're going to scroll down to menu total data. We're going to hit enter. So what this does is it gives you totals for drivers, vehicles. You can go through independent drivers and see their totals since the start of the box. And then reset totals obviously would start those numbers counting again. Vehicle has the same thing, the display totals and the reset totals. This is really used for techs in the field more if they're just needing to see something really quickly, because all of this can be pulled in either platform on different reports. There's also a dispense total, so depending on which dispense point, you can see how much was dispensed over the time of the box since the beginning of the box. And then there's just a total overall that'll allow you to display it. So we're gonna hit exit one time and we're gonna go down to menu ID codes. So in the menu ID codes, we have driver. It looks very similar to the Wonderbox. We can scroll through 1 to 2,000 drivers and then we can see what codes there are. This is beneficial to the techs out in the field. If you're needing to get fuel and you don't have anybody around and the person running the software is not there, you can go into this menu and get a code and a pin for the driver, and you can see if that driver is locked out and you can scroll through each individual driver. Same option for the vehicle. Now the vehicle is going to have information that gets imported from the software as well, as far as a quantity that they can set a time, if it's in miles or hours. There's a lot of different options here under the vehicles that it gets from the software. If you need to change that for some reason out of the box, you can go in and manually do that. Mileage is important if you're using the forced mileage mode and you have to reset a vehicle's mileage. This is where you're going to go. You're going to go into the mileage and you're going to hit, you know, correct the mileage to the right mileage that they're using now. And then you're going to hit enter and it'll reset their mileage for them. Credit, this is going to be for the contingents feature, so this would be on the pro version of the software or the cloud. You're just going to see the options in here, what you have set. If you have vehicles limited to a certain product, you're going to see those show up here. It's going to tell you, you know, how many days and how many gallons they're allowed to get on each one. If we hit exit one time, we can go down to master and we can set a different master code other than the 5 nines to get into the menu, and we can also add a pin if we would like. If you need to change this for some reason because you're concerned about people getting into the menus on the box, you can go in and do so here. Then there's a USB code, and you can also have a pin as well on the USB. So what this is going to do is prompt for a code whenever we go into the USB menus. I'll show you where that's at. It's default 5 nines as well. You can change that to something else. You can change or add a pin to it. And then ID system, we always have this set to transponder. And then tag identity. So this is where you can scan your key fob on the Superbox. If it was assigned to someone, it would say who it was assigned to, which driver or which vehicle, and then it's going to give you that ID. So if you don't have the key fob reader and you need to program these, this is the ID for this key fob. We're going to hit exit out of there, and we're going to scroll down to menu system. So under menu software, you have a lot of different options here. The most important one that we're going to look at is initialization. So what this is going to do is clear the box for you. So it's almost like when we put the number 1 up in the back from a menu standpoint. So we're going to exit out of there. We're going to scroll down to refuel options. Here's where you have all of your queries for the box. So our ID request, we have driver, vehicle, both, or we have no code at all. We can set that to whatever we'd like. We can turn on the order number if we'd like. This is a free field, doesn't get referenced anywhere in the software. This is mostly used by rental companies or companies that have a lot of assets. They usually enter in a stock number there. Something to just make it a little easier so people aren't having to keep up with 3 or 4 or 5,000 different trucks that are rotating on a daily basis. They'll use the order number for that. Now, mileage, you can turn this to yes, no, or forced mode. So yes means it's going to inquire for mileage, but it's going to accept whatever they put in. Forced mode means that it's going to have to go 1 more mile than the last mileage that was entered. So that's where that ident code vehicle menu comes into play. If they're using that, then you would have to go in and reset the vehicle's mileage individually, and this can only be done on the box. Old mileage is going to show you the previous mileage that they entered in while it's prompting for mileage. So you can turn this on or off. A lot of times if you're using force mode, I recommend turning it on just so they can see what they typed in last time, so they know if they messed up. If there's going to be a problem, someone needs to come out and reset their mileage. Hours, this is automatically going to set to whatever you've chosen in the software based on that vehicle or piece of equipment. So in the HD manager, it's going to be in the software videos. Under the vehicles, there's an option for mileage or operating hours, so you can set whichever one that is. And when it gets to that point on the box, if you've typed in a piece of equipment that's set to hours, instead of asking for mileage, it will ask for hours. Preset. So if you want to turn on a preset quantity, you can. So what this does is it will make them type in at the box how many gallons they're going to get and hit enter, and then it will allow them only to fuel the amount of gallons that it has entered. So if you type in 25, once you've hit 25 gallons, it's automatically going to cut that transaction. You can turn that on or off, and then you have an overall limit for the entire box. So we can narrow this down multiple ways. We want to make sure this limit is high. If you have this limit set to 100 and then you have a dispense point limit set to 200, it's not going to allow you to go to 200. It's going to stop at this limit. So we want to make sure this limit is pretty high here on the quantity. This is the max that can be, is 2,641 gallons. Limit time is 30 minutes. We can up that even if we feel like we're going to have trucks that are taking longer than that. And the limit pause is going to be how long they have, you know, when the pulser is not giving pulses to the box. before it times out the transaction. So we want to leave this low because we don't want our pump running while fuel's not flowing through it. It's just not good for the pumps. And that concludes the refuel options. All right, and then we have a menu clock. Obviously you go in here, you can set your date and time on the box if it's incorrect, and you can set it for daylight savings time or not. Restart time, this is where you can set for the box to automatically restart at a certain time every day. It'll just power cycle it and reboot it and just have it come back up at that time. Backlight LCD does not apply, so we don't need to get in that. And then ident number, this is the serial number of the box. You're not able to change it here. The only place you can actually change it is by putting that number 1 up and altering it. You shouldn't really need to do that unless the box is being moved between customers. They already had a cloud account. You're wanting to make sure that the serial number isn't attached to someone else's account. So that's it for the menu system. And then we're gonna exit one time, we're gonna go to menu product. So if you have Wi-Fi, LAN, or cloud, and you name your products in those platforms, it's automatically going to send that out to the box. So we're not gonna have to go in and rename anything. If you have USB, you will have to go in and rename your products. So you can erase this out, and then going up and down scrolls through, you know, the numbers, the letters, and then you would hit enter. You can set what unit is being dispensed on each of these. If you see, you scroll to the right, it goes through all the dispense points. Now, if you have a 2-host box, it's only gonna go between 1 and 2, and then it'll scroll back to 1. This is a 5-host box, so it's gonna go through all 5 dispense points. Decimals, you can go up to 3 here if you'd like. It's 0, 1, 2, or 3. Most people leave it default at 2. If you're needing it a little more accurate, you can bump it up to 3. EDP number, this is the product number, it is in the software. So what this does, it just matches it up with your software. You have a list of products, you're giving it that list, you're telling it what product on the list is being fueled on this dispense point. So you could go in and manually change this in the box if you wanted to. The only time that you really absolutely have to go in here is if you're on a USB box and you're needing to change the name of your products. All right, so if we exit out of that and we scroll down to menu dispense point, this is one of the most used menus that we're gonna have in this box. Pulser is gonna be single. We do have the option for double. It would go in IMP1 and IMP2. Most cases, not using a dual pulse, but if you're needing it for some reason, there is an option in here to do that. Pulse value, this is going to be your pulses per gallon that your meter is putting out. So if you have the fill right 900, that's gonna be 10. It's set default for our FMOG 100 with no display, which is always 204. So if you know that your meter is different than 204, or if you're not sure, you can start there and then do the math and get down to what you need it to be. And if you see also, it's gonna scroll through those dispense points same way. Each dispense point has the same settings. So you can go in here and change the pulse value. When you're calibrating, this is where you're gonna be at, is under the pulse value. Now the factor, we usually leave that at 1, unless for some reason, the smaller the pulse rate is. So if we get down to those fill rates and it's 10 and you put your pulse value at 9 and it's kind of off still, and you put it at 10 and it's kind of off, we can use what we call the factor. I believe it's amount delivered divided by amount indicated multiplied by current factor, and that gives you the new factor. So you'll leave the pulse value alone at that point, and then you'll start altering the factor. If your pulser is 100 to 1, normally you're not going to have that issue. It's normally when we get down to the 10 to 1 pulsers that we have to go into the factor. And then you'll see that we have a quantity, a time, and a pause for each dispense point. So this is what I was talking about earlier, where you have your overall dispense limit for the entire box, and then here you can kind of narrow it down by, you know, which product they're getting, how much they can get, how much time they have to get it, and how long that pump's going to run without seeing any pulses. So you have that on, you know, each dispense point as well. Now, nozzle switch. This is probably the most common thing that we get calls about, is the nozzle switch. So N.O does not mean that there is not a nozzle switch. It means normally open. So if you hit enter here, you're going to see that it's set to normally open. If you have no nozzle switch and it's set to normally open, your pump is not going to kick on. So if you just installed a box, your pump is not kicking on, and you do not have a nozzle switch, this is the first place you need to go. So we have normally closed and we have no switch. So if we do not have a nozzle switch, we need to make sure that that is set to no switch. It's just going to show a dash there, and we need to do that for each dispense point. This box does come default set to normally open on every dispense point. So if you're going in there to calibrate, or you're going in there to change your pulse value right off the bat, you might want to go ahead and go into the nozzle switch setting and change that as well. Zero dispense. So the zero dispense, this is how many times someone can enter in their information and not actually pump any fuel before it's gonna lock out the box. So some people use this. It kind of indicates if you have a pulsar problem. So if you don't go out there, you know, say you only go out to pull your transactions every 2 weeks, it may have been 2 weeks since you noticed that your pulsar is not working. So what this does is it's gonna lock the box down so no one can fuel, and you're gonna wonder, well, why can't anyone get fuel? This is set to 5. That means someone tried to fuel 5 times and didn't get any pulses out of the pulsar, whether they got fuel or not. It's telling you that it's not recording anything on the box. So you can set that. If it's set to 0, it's not gonna go by that. And then you can lock a dispense point. Any of the dispense points, so say you're doing maintenance on 1 or 2, you can lock those out. So if someone does come up and try to get fuel on it, it's gonna tell them that they can't, that it's locked. And so you'll just go through and change the settings for each dispense point. And then we're gonna exit out of that, we're gonna go to menu fuel tank. So this is if you're using wired probes into the Superbox. So you'll see we have, you know, different fuel tanks. You have up to 5 fuel tanks on this box. On the 2 hose, you're gonna have up to 2. And you can set, you know, what kind of switch. Our wired probes are always set to level sensor. And then if you exit one time, you're gonna scroll down, you see that you have tank parameters. This can also come from the software or the cloud platform. So when you're connecting, if you set that up already, it's gonna automatically populate that in here. But if you wanna go in and do it manually while you're doing the setup to make sure you're getting a reading, you can go in form and select which type of tank you have, set the volume, the height, the density, the sensor type. This is gonna be different. It's the M bar on your wired probe. So normally it is a sticker on the actual probe or with the paperwork for that probe. So you just want to make sure you check that. So when you're going to configure it, you know which one of these settings that you're going to check. All right, and then we have the options for the tank level as well. This is going to show you when you have tank hooked up, what the current levels are. And I'll show you a shortcut to that here in just a second when we get on the main screen as well. The menu printer we don't use. We do not offer printers that integrate with this box, so we're gonna skip that. We're gonna go to menu interface. So menu interface, while we set the interface in the background to USB, we also need to set whatever interface we're gonna be communicating as. So if you go and put a Wi-Fi upgrade in here, you're gonna go into a protocol and you're gonna change this to WLAN. Now you'll see that it gives you different options. So if you set it to WLAN or cloud, you're gonna get a read config option. So that config file that you're pulling, the network.dat file that you're pulling from either the software or the cloud, if you hit enter here, it's gonna prompt you to insert the stick. It's gonna grab that file and it's gonna go through and adjust your settings. DHCP, this is to turn that on or off for the box. If DHCP is on, you're not going to be able to change your IP, your subnet, or your gateway. You have to turn DHCP off to be able to alter these, because if DHCP is on, it's not looking at what's in those fields at all. Port should not be changed. MAC address, if you're using LAN or Wi-Fi, you can get the MAC address from the card here. And then you'll see you have a menu WLAN under the Wi-Fi menu. And you can go in and check your signal strength. There's also read config here. Your SSID and your password can be manually entered at the box. If you don't have access to the software to upload that config file, you can go in here. And so now we're going to go out to the main screen. So if we hit exit here, the nozzle is always going to take you back to your main screen. On your main screen, if you hit the down arrow, it's going to show you those tank levels. Just a quick to get to them from the screen, and if you hit your up arrow, it's going to show you your firmware version and your serial number. And you can keep hitting that, it's going to keep showing you. So we're going to hit any gray key now. This person over here, they can hit this without going to a menu. So if your box randomly goes to German, you'll just hit the person, change it down to English, and hit enter. So you can change it from German to English. If you set your box up under the first initialization as DE, it's going to default to be in Dutch. So that's the first place we want to go, is there, change it to English so we can understand what we're doing. So now let's go over the USB menu. Our USB code is the 95 times. We're going to hit enter. So you don't want to plug your stick into the Superbox until you've hit enter on one of these options. It's going to prompt you. It's going to tell you, please insert the USB stick. So we don't want to have that stick in until we've hit enter on one of these. Export data is going to take transactions and your data out file, like a copy of everything on the box, and put it onto the stick. Import data is going to prompt it to take everything off the stick and put it into the box. Report dispensing, report totals, and report ID codes. These are all reports that are going to go into PDFs straight onto the stick. So if you hit report dispensing, it's going to just download a quick PDF report onto your stick. That's not able to be imported into your software. This is more for techs in the field that are needing to, see if their transactions went through, see what kind of totals. If they're needing a list of, driver or vehicle codes, or there's some kind of emergency where that's necessary, this will download it straight to the stick. You can plug the stick into any computer and you'll be able to open it up. You don't necessarily need the software for this. Language from USB, you're able to change that. Again, I don't know that that's an issue for us, but if you have, data in files coming from other countries that are formatted a little differently, you're able to change that here and still bring it into the box. And so we're gonna hit exit and get back out to our main screen. And that concludes the menus on the Superbox.